modern greyhound can be traced back more than 6,000 years to wall sculptures of the ancient civilizations in the Middle East. From day one, it was apparent that the animal was bred and trained to hunt. Tremendous speed, strength and stamina, three of its most vital characteristics, with its general conformation almost identical to today's racing dog. The naming of the breed is open to much conjecture. However, one theory is that it evolved from the words gazed hound, due to its lack of scenting abilities, but its undisputed sighting of its quarry. Another theory suggests that the original breed were mainly grey in colour. Whatever the origins of its name, it's apparent that the greyhound was always a member of the ruling classes. As time evolved, so too did the greyhound, through Egypt and Greece, Persia, China and eventually to Europe. Henry VIII stated that all young noblemen should finish their education by rearing and training greyhounds. It's a far cry from today, where the sport of greyhound racing is recognised as a working person's sport, a sport enjoyed by hundreds of thousands of owners, trainers and breeders in many countries throughout the world. The greyhound was eventually introduced to Australia via the voyage of the Endeavour, and on April the 28th, 1770, a greyhound stepped foot on Australian soil for the very first time. Published journals credit the eminent botanist Sir Joseph Banks as the owner of the greyhounds, and it was written that on May the 1st, 1770, Banks and other members of the party set out with one of the dogs to capture some quarry on their new abode. The greyhound sighted a strange animal about the size of a rabbit and gave chase, but immediately lamed himself against a stump hidden in the long grass. 18 years later, and greyhounds were again amongst the passengers of the first fleeters. This time they more than earned their keep, capturing rabbits, wallabies and even kangaroos, which eventually evolved into the sport of coursing in the mid-1800s. Narracourt in South Australia earned the distinction of conducting the first meeting. Coursing was then conducted throughout Australia, with the Waterloo Cup the most cherished event. The record books show that one of the legends of Australian coursing was a greyhound called Terminus. A fawn dog whelped in 1923, Terminus was purchased for 10 guineas as a puppy and eventually earned his owners more than £9,000 in trophies, wages and prize money. But without a doubt, the most significant date in the history of Australian greyhound racing is May the 28th, 1927. Courtesy of an American, Judge Frederick Swindell, whose judgeship was open to some debate, mechanical lure racing commenced at the site now known as Harold Park. The winner of the first event was Bella Maud, and crowds reaching upwards of 20,000 ensured the immediate success of the new sport. Swindell's company, known as the Greyhound Coursing Association, was eventually listed on the stock exchange, and it wasn't long before another track opened at Mascot, under the banner of the Australasian Coursing Club. The mayor of Mascot at the time was a gentleman named Mr. Dave Alexander, who later founded the Greyhound Recorder. Greyhound tracks were now being set up in all different states of Australia, but the sport was also attracting more than its share of troubles. In 1934, the New South Wales National Coursing Association chartered a code of racing rules, which led to it being recognised as the controlling body of the sport. In 1937, the Australian and New Zealand Greyhound Association was inaugurated to oversee the growth, development and conduct of the code. 2 years later, the Register of Names of Greyhounds was started, and in 1940, the first edition of the Australian Greyhound Stud Book was published. Today, there are over 100 tracks in Australia and New Zealand, with around 15,000 greyhounds being named each year.